Students, today we are going to start the new chapter, Neural Control and Coordination. Listen, the previous chapter, Locomotion, is completely deleted from our syllabus. So we are going to start the Neural Control and Coordination. As you know, the functions of the organs and organ system in our body must be coordinated to maintain homeostasis. Coordination means what? Coordination is the process through which two or more organs interact and complement the functions of one another. Do you understand what is meant by coordination? The process through which two or more organs interact and complement the functions of one another. For example, when we do physical exercises, the energy demand is increased for maintaining an increased muscular activity. So the supply of oxygen is also increased. The increased supply of oxygen necessitates an increase in the rate of respiration, even the heartbeat, and increased blood flow through blood vessels. When physical exercise is stopped, the activities of nerves, lungs, heart and kidney gradually return to their normal conditions. Thus, the functions of muscles, lungs, heart, blood vessels, kidney and other organs are coordinated while performing physical exercises. So in our body, the neural system and the endocrine system jointly coordinate and integrate all the activities of the organs. Shall we start the chapter? Yes. Nervous system or neural system. It is a system that controls and coordinates the body activities, conducts and integrates the information and responds to stimuli. We have already studied that what are the characteristic features of living organisms. Yes, one of the important character of living organism is response to stimuli. That process is controlled by neural system. So the neural system includes brain, spinal cord and nerves. Okay, where is brain located? Inside the skull. Then the brain is continued as a spinal cord. It is located in the vertebral column. Okay. Then the nerves arises from the spinal cord and the brain, totally forming a nervous system. It is made up of specialized cells known as neuron. Listen carefully. What is the structural and functional unit of nervous system? Neurons. Yes, listen here. Neuron means nerve cell. Neuron is the structural and functional unit of a nervous system. It has three main parts. What are the parts? We have studied in lower classes. Mainly three main parts. Cell body, it is otherwise known as cyton, dendron and axon. What are the three bodies? Cyton, see the head region, cyton and dendron. What is the dendron means? They say the branches, the axon, the main nerve. So three main parts of the neuron. First we can study that cell body. The cell body is otherwise known as cyton. It contains cytoplasm, cell organelles and Nissls granules. Granules body. See here we can see it contains cytoplasm. All cell contain what are the three main parts? Cell membrane, cytoplasm, nucleus, isn't it? Likewise, the neuron also a single cell. Yes. So it contains what is this? Cytoplasm, the cell organelles and Nissls granules. The Nissl bodies, small granules are there. It's also present here. And it is this, see, the branches are known as dendrites. At the center we can see the nucleus. The head region of this neuron is known as cyton. or cell body. It contains cytoplasm, nucleus, cell organelles, especially Nissls granules. Very important. Then, and one of the dendrites is longer, and this is known as what to say axon, and it is externally covered with a sheath membrane, myelin sheath, isn't it? Yes. And in between we can see some constrictions. These constrictions are known as nodes of Ranvier. The end of this neuron is known as synapses. Synapses provided with a knob, synaptic knob. Is it clear? The next main part is dendron or dendrites. The short fibers that project out of the cell body. See here, the short fibers project out of the cell body is known as dendron. Sub-branches of dendrons are called dendrites. These sub-branches are called as dendrites. The smaller units of the dendron is known as dendrites. They transmit impulses towards the body. Through the dendrites only the impulses are conducted. The third part of this neuron is axon. Axon also one of the nerve fiber. A long fiber which transmits impulses away from the cell body. Can you follow me? The long fiber transmits impulses away from the cell body, away from the cytosol. The branching of an axon is called axonite. The branch of the axon is known as axonite. Dendron is known as dendrites. The branches of the dendron is known as dendrites. The branch of the axon is known as axonite. Each axonite end as a bulb-like structure. This bulb-like structure is called synaptic knob. Did you understand? There are different types of neuron. There are three types: multipolar, bipolar and unipolar neurons. Listen, what is meant by multipolar neurons? One axon and two or more dendrons. Do you understand? One axon and two or more dendrons found in the cerebral cortex. This is known as multipolar. Bipolar neuron, one axon and one dendron found in the retina of the eye. The multipolar neuron is found in the cerebral cortex, means it is present in the brain. Did you understand? Yes. The bipolar means one axon and one dendron. One axon and one dendron found in the retina of the eye. Eye has three layers, isn't it? Yes. The retinal layer have the bipolar neuron. Unipolar neuron, only one axon found in the embryonic stage. Is it clear? Again, the axon is two types. Axon means the large nerve fiber arises from the cytosol. Okay, so there are two types of axon: myelinated axon and non-myelinated axon on the basis of the myelin sheath. The first one is myelinated axon. It is enveloped with Schwann cells which form a myelin sheath around the axon. See, here there is a presence of a myelin sheath and there is a presence of Schwann cells. And it is found in spinal and cranial nerves. What is meant by spinal nerves? The nerves arises from the spinal cord is known as spinal nerves. The nerves arises from the brain is known as cranial nerves. So, this myelinated axon is present in spinal nerve and cranial nerves. White colored area formed of myelinated nerve fiber is called white matter. In the brain, we can see some white colored area. So it is formed of myelinated nerve fibers. That's why that area of the brain is known as white matter. Gaps between two adjacent myelin sheets are called nodes of Ranvier. There is some constrictions now? Yes. The gap between these myelin sheath are known as nodes of Ranvier. Here we can clearly see the sheath, the gap between two myelinated sheath. The sheath is known as a myelin sheath. There is a presence of Schwann cells. Here it is clearly given. Okay. Another type of axon is non-myelinated axon. Here the Schwann cells present but no myelin sheath. The grey colored area without myelin sheath is called grey matter. The brain, it is white in color and grey in color. Here clearly it is given. It is white in color, it is grey in color. The white color is due to the presence of myelinated neuron. The grey color is due to the presence of non-myelinated neuron. Non-myelinated axon. Oh, totally. So the grey colored area without myelin sheath is called grey matter, found in autonomous and somatic neural system. Somatic means the neurons controlling our body. Okay, so there are two parts present in our brain, white matter and grey matter. White matter is filled with the myelinated axon. The grey matter is filled with the non-myelinated axon. Here we are going to study about the generation and conduction of nerve impulses. How the nerve impulses conducted through this neuron. The generation and conduction of nerve impulses. There are three steps of impulse transmission. First one, maintenance of resting membrane potential, action potential, propagation of action potential. Listen carefully. There are three steps in the impulse transmission. First one, maintenance of resting membrane potential, action potential, propagation of action potential. The impulse transmission is actually electrochemical. Okay, it is like that of electricity. How the electricity is passed through this that electric wire, no? Yes. Likewise, the impulse transmission is electrochemical. The first step is maintenance of resting membrane potential. Listen carefully. Neural membrane contains various selectively permeable ion channels. Here we can see it is a membrane of a neuron. The neural membrane contains various selectively permeable ion channels, negatively charged and positively charged ion channels. In a resting neuron, that means the neuron not conducting any impulse, the axonal membrane is more permeable to potassium ions and nearly impermeable to sodium ions. Can you follow me? In a resting neuron, that means if it is not conducting any impulse, here we can see this axonal membrane is more permeable to potassium ions and nearly impermeable to sodium ions. Also, the membrane is impermeable to negatively charged protein in exoplasm. Therefore, the concentration of potassium and negatively charged proteins in exoplasm is high and concentration of sodium ion is low. Can you follow me? Here itself we can see the concentration of potassium and negatively charged proteins in the exoplasm is a high concentration of sodium ion is low. The fluid outside the axon contains low concentration of potassium and high concentration of the sodium. High concentration of the sodium and low concentration of the potassium. This forms an ionic and concentration gradient across the resting membrane. This difference is making a concentration gradient across the resting membrane. Is it clear? So the ionic gradients or maintains the active transport of ions by the sodium potassium pump. It transports 3 sodium ions outwards for 2 potassium ions into the cells. Can you follow me? Due to this concentration gradient, it transports 3 sodium ions outward and 2 potassium into the cells. As a result, the outer surface becomes positively charged and the inner surface becomes negatively charged. That means they are polarized. So the electrical potential difference across the resting plasma membrane is called as resting potential. Now it is called resting potential. The next step is action potential. Listen carefully. When the stimulus is supplied in the neuron, the membrane at site A becomes permeable to sodium ions. If the impulse or stimulus is applied, the membrane at site A is permeable to sodium ions. This causes the rapid influx of sodium ions and reversal of the polarity at that side. That means outer negative and inner positive. It is called depolarization. The changing of this positive charge into negative charge. The outer negative and the inner positive. So it is called depolarization. The electrical potential difference during depolarization across plasma membrane is called action potential. That means a nerve impulse. The third step of conduction of nerve impulse is propagation of action potential. Here what will happen? At sites ahead, that means the B, the outer surface is positive. Yes, outer surface is positive and the inner surface is negative. As a result, a current flows on the inner surface from site A to B. On the other surface, the current flows from B site to A to complete the circuit. Hence, the polarity is reversed and the action potential is generated at B site. That is, action potential at site A arrives at site B. Here we can see the outside is positive, inside is negative. So there is a change in the polarization taking place. Here the negatively charged into positively charged. A to B side, B to A side. Likewise, continuously the moving of these impulses from one side to another side. So A arrives at site B. So the sequence is repeated along the axon and the impulse is conducted. This process is going on continuously in the axon. Okay, the rise in permeability to sodium ion is extremely short-lived. It is quickly followed by a rise in permeability to potassium ions. So immediately potassium ions diffuses outside the membrane and restore the resting membrane. Thus the fiber becomes ready for further stimulation. Okay, coming out and the inner side of this, there is exchange of ions taking place. So it is continuously taking place along the axon. The next topic is synaptic transmission of impulse. Where is synapse? At the end of the neuron. Yes. The synapse is a functional junction between two neurons. The junction between the two neurons. It is two types: electrical synapse and chemical synapse. Electrical synapse. In this, the membranes of pre and post-synaptic neurons are in close proximity. What's the meaning of the pre and post-synaptic neurons? Listen, it is the previous neuron, it is the posterior neuron. So, the pre and post-synaptic neurons are close proximity. So impulse transmission is similar to the transmission along the axon. So the impulse is transmitted through this way. Impulse transmission is faster than in chemical synapse. The impulse transmission is faster than in chemical synapse. The electrical synapse are very rare in human system. So in the chemical synapse, there is a fluid filled space. That space is known as synaptic clefts. These are the synaptic clefts between presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron. In between we can see this cleft, the presynaptic neuron and the postsynaptic neuron. There is a cleft, synaptic cleft. It is filled with fluid. The presynaptic regions have swellings called synaptic knob, or it is known as buttons. Okay, so they contain synaptic vesicles filled with neurotransmitters. There are so many knobs are there and they are filled with some chemicals, swellings. These synaptic knobs, they contain synaptic vesicles. That is, synaptic vesicles are filled with neurotransmitter. We can see small bulgings now. Yes, the synaptic vesicles are filled with neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters are acetylcholine or adrenaline. These chemicals are known as neurotransmitters. So clear, the end of this synapse is this region. Synaptic knob is having the synaptic vesicles. It is filled with some chemicals. That chemicals are known as neurotransmitters. Name the neurotransmitters: acetylcholine, and then adrenaline. Okay, there are different names are there. Even have you heard about dopamine, happy hormone, also a neurotransmitter. The impulse reaches at the axon terminal. Listen, the impulse coming through the axon and coming to the end of the neuron, end of the axon. The synaptic vesicles bind to the plasma membrane. This synaptic vesicle is bind to the plasma membrane of the post neuron. So it releases the neurotransmitter. It diffuses across the synaptic cleft. There is an exchange of a chemical substance taking place between the pre-neuron and the post-neuron. The transmission of a neurotransmitter taking place. It diffuses across the synaptic cleft. So combined with the receptors on the postsynaptic membrane, opening of ion channels allowing entry of ions generates action potential. So there is the pre-synaptic area, the chemical substance, that means what is the neurotransmitter, diffuses across the synaptic cleft. So combined with the receptors, the postsynaptic, next neuron, postsynaptic membrane, opening of ion channel, allowing the entry of the ions and here generating the action potential. The flow of the ions taking place in this area. So this action potential may be excitatory or inhibitory in nature. So this is the way the impulses are transmitted from one neuron to another neuron. Okay children, that's all for today. And read the text and side by side write the question answer in your zoology notebook, because you are going to submit your notebook in the school for the verification. So don't wait for the last minute. The date is very near to submit your notebook in our school. So complete your all question answers in your zoology notebook. Thank you. That's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day.